How do I lead in a way that honors God when I'm under pressure to compromise? This is Leading 10. I'm Chris Moore, and let's talk about one of the toughest tensions in leadership: compromise. Maybe it's pressure to bend the truth on the report, an unspoken expectation to play favorites. Maybe it's the temptation to chase success at the expense of our convictions. You know what's right, but you feel the heat and the voices that are all around you saying, well, this is just how things work here. Everyone else does it. You know, it's not that big a deal. It's just kind of expected. As a Christian leader, that's when your calling and your character begin to collide, where the world that we live in and the world that we should be in, two different things. So how do you stand firm when you're being nudged to bend, even if it's just a little bit? Daniel chapter 1, verse 8 says this, "But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself." Daniel, he was young and he was in a foreign land, a place that he really didn't know, surrounded by pressure to conform to what was expected. He didn't have a platform. He definitely didn't have any power, but he made a decision in his heart before the pressure hit. He drew a line. And this line wasn't driven out of pride, but out of his conviction. Galatians chapter 1, verse 10 asks us directly, "Do I seek to please men? For if I yet please men, I should not be the servant of Christ." In Romans chapter 12, verse 2, "Be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." The pressure to conform is real. Peer pressure is real, regardless of whether you're a child, a teenager, college, or an adult. But the power to stand firm comes from God. So when you're facing pressure to compromise, whether it's values, honesty, your faith, or even your leadership integrity, how do you lead in a way that truly honors God and is faithful to your core beliefs? Well, let's break this down a little bit. First, you have to pre-decide your convictions. You can't wait until you're up against the wall to decide what it is you really believe and what you're going to do. Daniel didn't wait until the moment of temptation to figure out where he stood. He had already purposed in his heart. If you don't define your boundaries before the pressure comes, you'll compromise when it does because you may not even recognize that there's a line there at all. So ask yourself, what are your unbreakables? What are the lines that you will not cross no matter what it costs you? The time to decide is now, not in the heat of the moment, not in the boardroom with a group of people, not in the middle of the tension of trying to close some deal or some sale. Right now is the time to decide. Step number 2, don't confuse results with righteousness. The world teaches us that success justifies the method. The end justifies the means. But that's not true. They will say, well, if it works, if it's profitable, if it gets you ahead, well, it's going to be okay. Don't look back. But that's not biblical leadership. That's not what God tells us to do. That's not Jesus's example. God cares about how you lead, not just where you end up. Sometimes the most successful move in the world's eyes is a complete sellout in God's. So when you're tempted to compromise for the sake of the win, ask this: would I still make this decision if no one applauded and only God saw me? That should be our compass. Step number 3, we need to stay anchored in identity, not approval. Confident in who we are, not in what other people say that we are. This is where Galatians 1:10 really kind of comes into play. If you're chasing people's approval, compromise is going to happen because you're trying to please them, not please God. You're going to morph. You'll mold yourself into what they see. You'll manage your image instead of leading from the integrity of who God says you are and who you say that you are. But if you can remember who you are, that you're a servant of Christ in all these situations, it can change everything. You don't answer to culture. You don't answer to pressure. you answer to God who called you to a specific purpose for him. That clarity should create courage for us, and we can gain courage out of that. Step number 4, we do need to be prepared for the cost and trust God with the outcome. Let's be real. Integrity is not always rewarded immediately. Sometimes it doesn't appear to be rewarded at all in this life. Sometimes you're going to lose that deal. You're going to miss out on a promotion. You're not going to get called in to do something. You're going to stand alone. But standing with God is not a loss. Daniel honored God, and God honored him in time. Daniel didn't rise instantly. He's a slave. He's captured. He's jailed. He's reviled against. But eventually his faithfulness opened doors that no compromise ever could have. Faithful leadership may cost you temporarily, but it protects you in eternity. There's two traps we need to watch out for. We need to stop justifying small compromises. We tell ourselves, well, it's just this once. This isn't really hurting anyone else. And I can go back. I can make this right, later. But small cracks in character create big failures in our long-term leadership. Now, this isn't about legalism. It's not about, hey, you've broken this. It's about our integrity. If you give yourself permission to cheat once, to mess up, to do something that you know you shouldn't do, you're going to do it again. We need to keep our hearts clean and our conscience clear. It's the hardest thing to live through life and to do, but it's so important. Trap number 2, becoming prideful about your convictions. Standing firm doesn't mean being arrogant. It's possible to have deep convictions and walk in humility. You don't need to shame others. You don't need to shout. Just stand with grace, with kindness, with consistency. Your quiet strength will say more than a sermon ever could. Look, nobody has ever been convinced because of somebody else yelling at them, reviling them, making fun of them, telling them off. Let's close with a reflection and a challenge. Is there an area where you're being tempted to compromise right now, either in actions or in attitude? It could be either one. Write down that area where you feel pressure to maybe bend, to shift your standards. Pray over it. Ask God for courage. Then tell someone you trust, hey, I'm fighting with this, but here's the line that I'm choosing to hold. Accountability makes our convictions stronger. Accountability is a big term in business. It needs to be a big term in our internal life as well. You don't have to cave to pressure. You don't have to compromise your witness to climb up the corporate ladder. You can lead boldly and humbly with a heart fully aligned with God, and God will take you to the places that you need to go to fulfill his plan. This is Leading 10. I'm Chris Moore. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me today. If this challenged you to take a stand, share it with another leader who's walking the same road. And remember, faithful leadership is courageous leadership. And I'll see you next time.